Good day, everyone. So for today's video, we're going to discuss something about interest. We are now on the second leg of general mathematics. Let one, two, three, go. Good day, everyone. So for today's video, we're going to start the second leg of general mathematics, which is the business mathematics. And the first topic that we have is the interest. So to fully understand what interests are, we first formally define different terms na konektado pagdating kay interest. Okay? So first is the what we so-called lender or creditor. Si lender or creditor is a person or institution who invests the money or makes the funds available. So in short, or in Filipino, ito yung may pera. Okay? Next is the borrower or the debtor. The borrower or the debtor is a person or probably an institution who owes the money or avails the funds from the lender. So kung si lender or si creditor yung may pera, then si borrower or si debtor naman yung binibigyan ng pera or yung kumukuha ng pera. Okay? So next is um, origin or the loan date. So si origin or si loan date is the date on which the money is received by the borrower. So kung kailan ibinigay nung may pera yung money na hiniram or ininvest. Okay? Next is the repayment date or the maturity date. Kung si origin is kung kailan ibinigay yung pera, yung repayment date or maturity date naman is kung kailan ibabalik or kailan kukuhanin yung pera. Okay? So, this is the date on which the money borrowed or loaned is to be completely repaid. Okay? So, let us have an example. Suppose I invested money from a bank. So, from that situation, I invested money from or I deposited money from a bank to a bank. Ako yung magiging lender at yung borrower nun is yung institution which is the bank. Okay? Kasi for example, nag-deposit ako ngayon ng pera, then the origin would be today, January 8, 2021. And then the repayment date or the maturity date is kung kailan ko, let's say for example, i-withdraw yung pera or kung kailan ibabalik ng bangko yung pera. Okay po? Next is the time or the term. So the time or the term is the amount of time, particularly in years, in which the money is borrowed or invested. It is the length of time between the origin and the maturity dates. So, ibig sabihin, ganito, yung time or term is the haba ng oras kung kailan mo siya pwedeng bayaran. Let's say, for example, nangutang ako ng 10,000 pesos sa kaibigan ko and I promised her to pay within 6 months. Meaning, the time or the term is 6 months. Pero ang sabi dito, it's the amount of time in years. So, kung 6 months yon, I still need to convert it in years. Okay, so that would be 6 over 12. So that would be 0.5 years. And we'll be talking about that, more of that later on kapag nagkaroon na tayo ng mga computation. Next is the principal. So the principal is the amount of money borrowed or invested on the origin date. Okay? So, si principal, ito kung magkano yung perang hiniram or kung magkano yung perang dineposit mula sa origin date. Okay po? So, ito yung starting money kumbaga. Next is the rate. So, the rate, the annual rate, usually in percent, charged by the lender or the rate of increase of investment. So, ito yung ipinapatong natin dun sa principal for the use of the money. It is the rate of increase, kung gaano ba yung itataas or kung gaano ba kalaki yung idadagdag natin dun sa pera na hiniram or dineposit natin. Okay? Next is the interest. The interest is the amount paid or earned for the use of the money. So, si interest ay nakadepende yan kay rate. Kung mataas yung rate mo, ibig sabihin mataas din yung interest. So, kung si rate ay kung gaano kalaki, kung si rate ay kung gaano kalaki yung idadagdag natin, si interest is kung magkano yung idinagdag dun sa on top of your principal. Okay po? And next is the maturity value or the future value. So yung maturity value or the future value is the amount after T years that the lender receives from the borrower on the maturity date. So ito na po yung, let's say for example, nangutang ako ng 10,000 and ang interest niya is 5,000. So the maturity value there would be 15,000. So si principal kasama na yung interest. Okay po? There are two kinds of interest. Okay? The first one is the simple interest or denoted by I sub S. So simple interest is an interest that is computed on the principal and then added to it. Just simply a simple computation of your interest. If you have the principal and then you multiply it with the rate and the time and then you add the interest to the principal, then that's the simple interest. Okay? But the second kind of interest, which is the compound interest, denoted by I sub C, is the interest to which it is computed on the principal and also on the accumulated past interest. So, eto, si compound interest, yearly po ito kino-compute. Kung kay simple interest, say for example, 5 years ka nangako ka na 5 years mo babayaran yung pera, then ang computation nun is isang bagsakan ng 5 years. Pero kay compound interest, kada year, kukumputin mo yan kasama nung past interest nung previous years. And we'll be illustrating more of that later. So, let us first have simple interest. So, paano nga ba natin kino-compute si simple interest? So, simple interest is computed using the formula I sub S equals PRT, to which I sub S stands for the simple interest, P stands for the principal, R stands for the rate, and T for the time or the term in years. So, we simply what? To get the simple interest, we simply multiply the principal, the rate, and the time, given that the rate is converted into decimal already. Okay po? So, let us have examples. So, let us first have this one. How much interest will 500,000 earn after 3 years if a bank offers 0.15 simple interest rate? Okay? So, in solving problems like this, it is a prerequisite for us to write first the given para hindi po tayo malito. So, here sabi dito, how much interest will 500,000 earn? So, ibig sabihin, yung 500,000 natin will be our principal. So, that would be our P. So, that is 500,000. And then, sabi dito, earn after 3 years. So, yung 3 years natin would be our time. Okay? Next is, if a bank offers 0.15% simple interest rate. So, si 0.15% is actually our rate. Pero tulad ng sinabi ko kanina, before we proceed with the computation, we still need to convert 0.15% into decimal. Ang gagawin natin is, in converting that, we move the decimal point 2 decimal places to the left. So that would be 0. If this is 0.15, okay? If this is 0.15%, then we move the decimal point 2 decimal places. We have 1, 2. So ibig sabihin, that would be 0.0015. Okay po? And then, since the problem is asking for the simple interest, then we are to look for the simple interest. So that is simply what? That is simply having I sub S equals PRT. And then substituting all the necessary values to our formula. P now is 500,000. The rate is 0.0015. And then our time is 3 years. And by plugging in all these to our calculator, so you can use the calculator. So that would be 500,000 multiplied by 0.0015 multiplied by 3. And that will yields to 2,250 pesos. So that would be the simple interest ng ating problem. Okay po? So, after 3 years, makaka-gain ng 2,250 pesos yung 500,000 mo if the simple interest rate is 0.15%. Okay po? So that's how we solve simple interest. So let us have another example. Suppose we have the problem, a businessman borrowed 250,000 pesos from a bank and promises to pay it after 10 months with simple interest rate of 12%. The question is, how much is the interest? So, ang hinahanap po natin is the simple interest. Now, determining the given, sabi dyan, a businessman borrowed 250,000 pesos, meaning to say the principal is 250,000 pesos. And then, sabi dyan, the businessman promises to pay it after 10 months. Ibig sabihin, yung time natin would be 10 months. Yet, sabi sa definition natin, the time or the term should be expressed in years. So, paano po natin mako-convert yung months into years? Since there are 12 months in a year, we simply divide 10 by 12. And that will yields to 10 divided by 12. That would be 0.8333. So that's non-terminating decimal. Okay. Next is the last given would be the interest rate, wherein it is sabi dyan 12%. And if we're going to convert it into decimal, that is 12. Since whole number siya, so yung decimal point ay nandito. So we move the decimal point 2 decimal places to the left. That is 1, 2. Hence, our rate would be equivalent to 0.12. Okay po? And by plugging in all the necessary values to our formula, that would be I sub S equals PRT. Okay? So the principal, tulad ng sinabi, is 250,000 pesos multiplied by the rate, which is 0.12, multiplied by the time, which is 0.833. Okay? And by plugging in all the values to our calculator, so that would be 250,000 pesos multiplied by 0.12 multiplied by 0.833. Okay? Or you can simply have 10 over 12 or 5 over 6 para mas accurate. Okay po? So that will yields to 24,000. That is 24,990 pesos. Meaning, the simple interest na magigain ng 250,000 pesos after 10 months with simple interest rate of 12% would be 24,990 pesos. So that's how we solve for the interest. Okay? But there are cases to which hindi lang yung simple interest mismo yung kinukuha natin or yung nawawala dun sa problem. Pwede ang nawawala ay yung principal, pwede naman din nawawala ay yung rate, at pwede din naman nawawala natin ay yung time or kaya yung interest natin. Okay po? In dealing with that, we also use the formula I sub S equals PRT. Suppose we have the first problem here, to which ang nawawala natin ay yung principal. So, paano po natin makukuha yung principal natin? So, para makuha natin yung principal, so, manipulating the formula, kailangan matira lang po sa isang side ng equation ay P. And that would happen if we divide both sides by RT. Okay, so para ma-cancel po natin yung RT at P lang yung matira sa kabila. Hence, in dealing or in solving for the principal of a simple interest, then that would be simple interest over the rate times the time. Okay po? And since we are already given with the rate, the time, and the interest, we plug it into our formula. So, the simple interest, sabi dyan, is 2,300. And then we have the time, which is 3 years. And then we have the rate, which is 3.2%. And if we're going to convert that into decimal, we move the decimal point 2 decimal places to the left. That is 1, 2. So, ibig sabihin, Ibig sabihin, our rate would be equivalent to 0.032. Okay po? So, we now solve for the principal, that is P equals I sub S over RT. And then plug by substituting all the necessary values, we have 2,300 over, that is over the rate, which is 0.032 multiplied by the time, which is 3 years. And then, we would have, pwede naman natin siyang idiretso na sa calculator. We would have 2,300 over 0.032 multiplied by 3. And that will yields to 23,958.33. Since we are talking about money here, so yung decimal will be rounding off our final answer to the nearest hundreds. Hence, the principal would be 23,958.33. That will be for our first problem. Okay po? Next is, what if ang nawawala naman po natin ay yung rate? Given tayo ng principal, which is 40,000, given tayo ng time, which is 1 year and 6 months, and given tayo ng interest, which is 5,800. So again, we'll be considering the formula I sub S equals PRT. But this time, ang nawawala po ay yung rate. So para matira yung R sa kabila, magiging mangyayari lang yan if i-divide natin both sides by PT. So, para po makancel si PT at R na lang yung matira. Hence, in solving for the rate, that would be I sub S over PT. So, let us now solve this one. We have our principal, which is 40,000. And then we also have our time, which is 1 year and 6 months, to which, i-convert natin yung 6 months into years. That would be 6 divided by 12 because there are 12 months in a year, and that would be 0.5. And then, i-add natin yung 1, which will make it 1.5 years. Okay po? And then, we also have our interest, which is 5,800. And then, since we already have the given, we now substitute into the formula. We have R equals I sub S over PT. So we would have here, I sub S is 5,800 divided by the principal, which is 40,000, multiplied by the time, which is 1.5. And then plugging in the necessary values to our calculator, that would be 5,800 divided by 40,000 multiplied by 1.5. Okay po? And that will yields to 0.0966 or 67. Let's say 67 because that's non-terminating, repeating non-terminating decimal. Okay po? So this hindi pa po ito yung ating maging final answer because the rate is what? Is expressed in decimal. So, we still need to move the decimal point 2 decimal places to the right naman para ma-express natin siya in percent. So, ibig sabihin, if here is our decimal point, we move it 2 decimal places to the right, we have 1, 2, meaning to say, our rate would be equivalent to 9.67%. So, ito po yung ating magiging sagot sa ating problem. Okay po? So, ganun po natin isolve kapag rate po yung nawawala. What if, let us have another problem. What if ang nawawala naman po ay yung time? What if nawawala naman po yung time? We are given the principal, which is 300,000. Okay, the principal is 300,000. And then, our rate is 1.45%. Wherein if we're going to convert it into decimal, that is if nandito yung ating decimal point, we have 1, 2. So, our rate would be equivalent to 0.0145. And then, we have our interest, which is equivalent to 1,200. Okay? So in solving that, we still need to consider our formula that is I sub S equals PRT. And ang nawawala po natin ay time. So, paano po natin makukuha yung time? So, para mangyari po yon, we need to divide both sides by PR. Para po makancel natin sa formula yung PR, para T na lang yung matitira sa kabilang side ng equation. Hence, the formula in getting the time would be I sub S over PR. And then, by plugging in all the necessary values to our formula, that would be T equals, our I sub S is 1,200 over, the principal is 300,000 multiplied by, our rate is 0.0145. And then, by plugging in the necessary values to our calculator again, that would be equivalent to 1,200 divided by, that's 300,000, multiplied by 0.0145, and that will yields to 0. That will yields to 0.2759. So we just have rounded off to the nearest 10,000s. Okay? So ibig sabihin, our time would be 0.2759 years. So ito po yung magiging sagot natin. Okay po? And for the last problem, so madali lang po, dahil ang nawawala lang po naman ay yung interest. So, kung nawawala yung interest, we just need to have I sub S equals PRT. Okay po? So, the principal is equivalent to, sabi sa problem natin, that is 1 million. And then, we have the rate which is 15%, to which kapag kinonvert natin siya into decimal, that if here is our decimal point, we move the decimal point 2 decimal places to the left, we have 1, 2. Ibig sabihin, yung ating rate would be 0.15. And then we have the time which is 8 years. And then, substituting all the necessary values, we have I sub S equals PRT, to which P is equivalent to 1 million. And then the rate is 0.15, and then our time is 8. And then, by plugging it to our calculator, that is 1 million multiplied by 0.15 multiplied by 8. Okay? And that will yields to what? That will yields to 1 million. That's 1,200,000. Okay? So, magtataka kayo, sir, bakit po medyo malaki po yung simple interest natin kaysa sa principal? Pwede po yung mangyari kung mataas yung or kung matagal yung time at mataas yung rate. Okay po? So that's how we solve simple interest. Okay? But there are problems to which hindi lang po yung simple interest yung hinahanap natin, but we are after what we so-called maturity value. So ano nga po ba yung maturity value? So we have defined maturity value as yung pinagsamang principal and yung interest na na-compute natin. Okay? So in solving for the maturity value, which is denoted by F, so maturity value is equal to the principal plus the simple interest. So, tulad ng sinabi natin sa definition, i-add lang natin yung principal at saka yung simple interest. That, itong formula natin na to ay ginagamit natin kapag alam na natin yung amount ng interest natin. Pero paano kung hindi pa natin alam yung amount ng simple interest natin? Are we going to compute it separately? Pwede naman po, but there is another way or a shortcut for us to solve for the maturity value. So, since alam natin that the simple interest rate is equal to PRT, then we replace I sub S by PRT. So, magiging ganito po. And then, to which yung P natin is a common factor dito sa kabilang side ng equation. At pwede natin gamitin tong formula na to, which is F equals P times 1 plus RT kung saan nilabas natin si P. So, ito pong formula na to ay ginagamit natin kapag hindi po natin alam yung simple interest natin. Pero kung alam natin yung amount ng simple interest natin, then pwede na po natin itong gamitin yung mas madali. Okay po? So, let us have example. Suppose we have the problem. So, this is a problem given to you a while ago. That is, a businessman borrowed 250,000 from a bank and promises to pay it after 10 months with simple interest rate of 12%. Then, how much is the interest? So, kanina na-solve natin that the simple interest is equal to 24,990 pesos. So, paano po natin kukunin yung maturity value? That is simply having F equals P plus I sub S. Since tulad ng sinabi ko, kung alam na natin yung amount ng simple interest, ito na po yung gagamitin natin na formula. So, the maturity value would be equivalent to, so, first the given, of course, the simple interest, tulad ng sinabi natin, that's 24,990. And then our principal is 250,000. So, our maturity value would be 250,000 plus 24,990, which will yields to 274,990. So, ito po yung ating magiging maturity value. So, that's how simple we got the maturity value kapag alam po natin yung ating simple interest. But what if hindi natin alam yung amount ng simple interest natin? Okay? Pero, ang pinapahanap sa atin ay yung maturity value na. So, let us have this example. Suppose we have Lovely deposited 300,000 pesos in a bank that pays 2% simple interest. How much will her money be after 8 years? So, dun sa tanong na how much will her money be after 8 years, magkano yung magiging pera niya after 8 years. So, ibig sabihin, ang tinatanong natin dito is yung maturity value. So, yung principal mo na 350,000, kasama yung interest na ibabayad ng bangko sa'yo. So, yun po yung tinatanong after 8 years. So, in this case, we will now use the formula F equals P times 1 plus RT. Dahil hindi po natin alam kung ano yung simple interest natin. And with this, we first determine the given. We have P equals, the principal is 350,000 pesos. And then, next is the rate, which is 2%, to which kapag kinonvert natin siya into decimal, that is 1, 2. So, nandito yung decimal point. So, that would be equivalent to 0.02. Okay? And then, we have the time, which is 8 years. So, by plugging in these values to our formula, we would have F equals the principal, which is 350,000 pesos multiplied by 1 plus what is the rate? That is 0.02, and the time would be 8 years. So, and then we will now be plugging in this to our calculator. So, ang uunahin natin would be ito, yung 0.02 times 8. So, that is F equals 350,000 multiplied by 1 plus, so we have here 0.02 times 8, that would be 0.16. So we have 0.16, and then we add it to 1, so that is 350,000 pesos times 1.16. Okay, and then we multiply it now with 350,000, so that is 350,000. So we would have our maturity value would be 406,000. Okay? So ito po yung magiging maturity value niya after 8 years. Okay po? So after 8 years, meron siyang 406,000 pesos sa kanyang bangko. Okay po? So now, balik na rin naman natin yung tanong. Magkano naman yung interest na nakuha niya? Okay? So if the maturity value is 406,000, para makuha natin yung ating interest, ang gagawin lang natin is simple interest is equal to maturity value minus the principal, of course. So that would be 406,000 minus 350,000. and that will yields to 56,000 pesos. So yung interest na nakuha niya after 8 years is 56,000 pesos. That is why our maturity value would be 406,000 pesos. And that's how we solve simple interest.